Lectric has become one of the largest and most recognizable e-bike companies in the US, and the company's success is largely due to its ever-popular XP line of folding e-bikes. The XP3 was named America's favorite e-bike due to its top spot in sales, so you can imagine that we've been anxiously awaiting the release of this new and improved model, the XP4. This bike is packed with huge upgrades and new features while keeping its price of around $1,000. So what all do you get at such a great price? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report, where we put e-bikes through a series of standardized performance tests to find out which ones are worthy of your hard-earned cash. My name's John, and I'll be walking and talking you through our review of the XP4 today. As a heads up, we wanted to get a review of this bike up as soon as possible, but since our in-depth testing takes so much time, we haven't quite finished our hill and range testing. We're also taking a bit more time with this one. We wanted to go a bit deeper than usual with this bike, just because of some of the pretty bold statements Lectric has made about it. In today's video, we'll still run through the XP4 specs, we'll talk about how it feels to ride, and we'll also cover some performance data, but do be aware that this review won't be quite as thorough as most of our others, although we will release an update once we complete our testing. Before we get into the details, please be sure to subscribe to our channel so YouTube knows you're interested in our reviews, educational content, and our weekly news and entertainment show. And then if we're able to guide you toward a great bike, please help support all the hard work we put into our content by using the affiliate link in the video description if or when you make a purchase. But let's explore the XP4 and talk about some of its highlights. Starting off with price, the $1,000 mark is and has been roughly the starting point for our recommendations, simply because most bikes we've tested below that mark have tended to make big sacrifices in terms of quality, performance, or both. The US is currently embroiled in a trade war with China at the time of filming, so prices are set to increase across the board due to tariffs, but somehow Lectric has kept the XP4's price at $999, which is the same price as previous versions of the bike stretching back to 2021. That makes this bike a fantastic value purchase at face value alone. But as our second highlight, I want to point out a bunch of features that come standard on the XP4 that we don't usually see at this price. As a quick side note, I do want to note that there are two versions of this bike. The base model we'll be talking about has a 500 watt rear hub motor and a 48 volt 499 watt hour battery, but there is also an upgraded model with a 750 watt motor and an 840 watt hour battery that's priced at around $1,300 at the time of filming. Both models feature a torque sensor for responsive pedal assist, as well as an integrated headlight and a tail light with brake light functionality and turn signals for safety. The bike also features a custom hydraulic disc brake system that did a great job in our testing. It comes with quick release pedals to make it more compact when folded, and it also has a color TFT display with a custom user interface that looks really clean and modern. Another highlight is the bike's pedal assist system. Now, with a torque sensor, the motor can adapt its power output to match the amount of pressure you put on the pedals. Most of the time it favors a relatively natural and active experience, but the bike's highest power level has a more relaxed feel, and Lectric also gives you the ability to switch to a torquier setting that I found to be a little bit peppier if you want a little bit more reward for your effort. It's a pretty unique setup for e-bikes in general, and it's a new approach for Lectric specifically, and I think it's just really user-friendly overall. Running through the bike's specs and components in more detail, the XP4 has a redesigned aluminum frame that comes in both a high step and step through style. The step through model I tested has a standover height of about 19 inches. The 500 watt motor I talked about has a peak of 1,092 watts with 55 newton meters of torque. The 499 watt hour battery is removable and it's stored inside the down tube. And the brake system uses 2 piston calipers paired with 180 millimeter rotors. Lectric equipped the bike with an 8-speed drivetrain with a 56-tooth chainring, an 11 to 32-tooth cassette, and a Shimano Altus derailleur. There's also a set of custom 20x3-inch tires with a hybrid tread for riding on paved and unpaved surfaces. The wheels are covered by plastic fenders. The welded cargo rack has a carrying capacity of 150 pounds and is compatible with cargo and passenger accessories, including a child seat, and there's also a custom saddle on this bike. Up in the cockpit, the XP4 has 660mm handlebars with lock-on ergonomic rubber grips. There's a thumb-operated throttle on the left handlebar next to the bike's control panel, and then there's a trigger-style shifter on the right handlebar. A few more details before we wrap this section up. The XP4 is a Class 2 e-bike with throttle and pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour out of the box, but it can switch to a Class 1, a Class 3, or a California Class 3 mode with the throttle deactivated through the bike settings menu. The XP4 itself is UL 2849 certified, as well as ISO 4210 certified, and its battery is UL 2271 certified. It has a total payload capacity of 330 pounds. We weighed our test bike at just over 72 pounds, although it does have Tannis liner installed in the tires. And there are two color options for this version of the bike. The step-through model comes in Tempest Gray and Stratus White, while the high-step frame comes only in Tempest Gray. There are two additional color options for the 750 watt version in case you want something a little bit more colorful. That model comes in Pine Green and Raindrop Blue. That covers all the basics, so let's keep things moving and take a look at how the bike folds, and then we'll dive into a couple test sections and then see how it performed. The XP4's design is very similar to previous models and plenty of other folding e-bikes on the market, with a hinged frame and a telescoping collapsible stem. It also has the quick release pedals I mentioned, which are pretty uncommon outside of Lectric's bikes. But anyway, let's walk through the folding process so you can see how it breaks down. So first things first, we'll kick up the kickstand. Go ahead and pop off those pedals. It's an awkward angle. There we go. We'll fold down the stem here. There's a lock to release, and then those just swing down. We'll drop the seat post, and then we will get to the hinged frame in the middle. And then at that point, it's just a matter of swinging things around and setting them down. So overall, there's nothing super out of the norm here, and the process is pretty straightforward. I do want to mention that both the high step and step through frame styles have some frame contact that ended up damaging the paint somewhat when they were folded. So we encourage Lectric to add another rubber bumper like they have in a couple of other places on the bike to prevent that from happening. That aside, I really like the quick release pedals here, but I do also want to point out that the seat tube isn't sealed at the bottom, and there are a lot of cables that run beneath the opening. So as a word of caution, I wouldn't try to shove the saddle down, or you might damage something, or at least pop some zip ties. But for reference, we measured the folded bike at 35 inches long by 19 inches wide by 29 inches tall. All right, starting things off with our brake test. My fellow reviewer Griffin does this test for consistency's sake, and the process he uses is to paddle up to 20 miles per hour before applying the brakes. He then measures the distance he and the bike traveled before stopping completely, and then he repeats the process 2 more times. We use the 3 test scores to calculate an average stopping distance, which in the XP4's case is the single best brake test result for an e-bike that we've recorded at the time of filming. Griffin's average was a truly remarkable 15 feet and 3 inches. For comparison, the average among all e-bikes is currently 21 feet and 7 inches, while the average for folding e-bikes comes in around a foot shorter at 20 feet and 8 inches. So Lectric worked with Star Union to develop a custom hydraulic disc brake system called the 602 model. It has sturdy aluminum levers, a motor cutoff feature, a really large fluid reservoir, and as I referenced earlier, 2 piston calipers with 180 mil rotors. A key difference between this system and many similar models we've tested is that its rotors are thicker at 2.3 millimeters versus the more common 1.8 millimeter thickness. Thicker rotors mean better overall dispersion of heat and also better overall braking performance. The difference here was definitely noticeable by feel. Braking felt powerful without being too aggressive, and the system modulated speed really well when I was going downhill. Our entire team has been super impressed with the 602s. They are clearly safe and effective, so we give the XP4 an emphatic 2 thumbs up. To test the XP4's throttle and pedal assisted speeds, I took it out to our local shared use paths for our speed test. I rode this bike in each of its pedal assist settings in both Class 2 and Class 3 modes to find my average speeds. Let's see how the test went. I'll share a bit about the experience along the way, and then we can take a closer look at the results once we get back here in the studio. All right, so we are here for a speed test on the XP4, starting off in Class 2 mode. And let's see, we are pedaling with no assist right now, just my own leg power, and going around 10 miles per hour, maybe a little above, with I'd say a moderate level of effort here. Let's go ahead and go up to eco mode. All right, so pretty quiet motor. I felt a little boost in power there. Pretty subtle though. Still feels, you know, similar to how it does with no pedal assist, but we are definitely getting a difference in speed here. So about 2 miles per hour or so, up to around 12, maybe a little above. Okay, let's go up to tour mode. All right, nice subtle ramp up in power there, and I can feel the motor responding to the pressure that I'm putting on the pedals with the torque sensor there. So cruising pretty comfortably at this point, not having to put as much pressure on the pedals. And we're up to about 16.5 with, you know, a lighter level of effort for sure. Maybe up towards 17. Okay, let's go up to sport mode. I'm gonna shift up a couple gears. All right, that feels really good. Definitely a nice mid-powered setting. So we are hitting the class 2 ceiling here, which, you know, is not unexpected. That is relatively low as far as speed goes. But yeah, feeling good here. Again, just kind of cruising, 20.3-ish at the max, it looks like. Let's go up to Sport Plus. And I don't expect really much difference here, just considering that we are at the class 2 ceiling. And yeah, holding kind of steady around 20.5, a little above. And then we'll finish things off in turbo mode. Same thing. Okay, now there is one thing I want to show you here, and that I'm gonna just sort of relax and ghost pedal. And you know, in this setting, the pedal assist system is a little bit more cadence based, so it is dishing out a pretty good amount of power that's keeping me very close to the top speed with really no effort at all other than just spinning the cranks. So yeah, pretty nice there. If you want to just relax, you can pop it in this mode and enjoy it. Okay, well, everything looks good here. Let's turn around and do a class 3 test, and then we'll check out the throttle. All right, and we are back for a class 3 speed test. This time I'm just starting off in eco mode, pedaling kind of around the same spot, around 12.5 miles per hour or so. Again, with that sort of moderate level of effort. All right, let's go up to tour mode. Again, a noticeable difference there with pedaling being easier and the motor giving me, you know, a little bit more as I press into the pedals. So looks like a fairly similar place in this mode too. It's up to about 17 miles per hour. Yeah, maybe a little above 17.5. Okay. Well, still picking up a little bit on your left. Yeah, we're gonna say around 17.5. Maybe a little above. Let's go up to sport mode. All right. Definitely ramping up steadily. Shift up to 7th gear. Yeah, definitely cruising. Feels good. Feels light, feels easy. Up to around 23 miles per hour. Maybe a little above. All right, and then let's go up to Sport Plus. Again, at least going by feel, these increases in power seem to be pretty well spread out, pretty even. We're up to around 24.5. Yeah, okay. Maybe up toward 25. All right, and then let's, yeah, okay, holding at 25. All right, let's finish things off in turbo mode, see if we can hit that class 3 maximum. It's definitely not wanting to like fly up to top speed. Like I'm having to put some, you know, pressure in, some effort, but not bad. I'm gonna give it a little bit more. And yeah, so we're kind of right under 28, between 27.5 and 28. Okay, yeah, let's call it there and we'll go check out the throttle. All right, so the last thing we're going to do here is a throttle acceleration test from 0 to 20. Now, there is a setting where you can adjust whether or not the throttle is limited to different speeds depending on which pedal assist setting you're in. I have it set so that it gives, full blast in all modes, but we are starting off in turbo mode anyway. Just wanted to mention that. So let's go ahead and start in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Nice and steady. A little bit of a kick up front, but then that just kind of settled down, and then it went gradual in build here, and then we're at 20. Okay, very good. Let's head back to the studio. To recap the pedal test results, I started off with no pedal assist at 10.1 miles per hour, and then in the class 2 test, I went up to 12.1 in eco, 16.8 in tour mode, 20.2 miles per hour in sport, and then 20.5 miles per hour in both sport plus and turbo. My speeds in the class 3 test were faster in all modes. I hit 12.5 miles per hour in eco, 17.6 in tour, 22.9 in sport, 25.2 miles per hour in sport plus, and finally 27.7 miles per hour in turbo. To clarify what I said about 20 miles per hour not being all that fast, I really meant that it was just going to be limiting in this test, and we see that in the class 2 graph. There were pretty even jumps in speed when going from eco to tour and tour to sport, but things really leveled off there because of the speed limit, even though the motor has enough power to reach higher class 3 speeds when it's allowed to. There was a difference in power when using Sport Plus and Turbo, and then of course Turbo also has the more cadence-based power delivery that gives you the ability to relax and take it easy. The class 3 graph shows large and evenly spaced jumps in speed from eco through sport, but then the jumps to Sport Plus and Turbo were a bit less drastic, although still consistent. I think the power distribution felt a bit more evenly distributed than it appears on the graphs, but either way, I think the bike did a good job here. Now, I will say after having ridden both this version of the bike and the 750 watt version, that this bike's less powerful motor gives it more of a natural feel by comparison. Lectric's programming sets sort of a baseline of power output as long as you're putting pressure on the pedals, so I wouldn't say this is the most responsive and natural feeling torque sensor out there, but there is a big difference in the level of responsiveness when comparing turbo mode to the lower pedal assist levels. Another cool feature of this bike is the assist level parameter in the bike settings menu, where you can choose between 2 settings called standard torque multiplier and increased torque multiplier. For those of you who don't speak Greek, this basically changes the bike's level of responsiveness and gives the motor a bit more pep. I personally preferred this bike with the increased torque multiplier, although it's worth acknowledging that most of our team didn't notice a huge amount of difference. As you can see from the throttle portion of the test, the acceleration there was pretty steady and controlled. I like that it wasn't super punchy for those who are new to e-bikes or who haven't been on 2 wheels in a while, and I really love that Lectric gives you the option to select a mode where each pedal assist setting sets different limits on throttle speed for those who do like more control. Again, I think the bike did a great job here, so I'll give it another 2 thumbs up. There are a ton of factors that influence how a bike feels to ride, and that's what we'll be talking about here in the ride quality section. Let's go out to the bike paths again and cover some of the basic elements like sizing, adjustability, ride comfort, and a few others, and then I'll see you back here to wrap things up. All right, let's talk about ride quality here on the XP4. So this is of course Lectric's flagship folding e-bike, and just from hopping on this version, I can tell that there are some really big differences to the geometry that improve how this version feels to ride, just compared to the previous model. So I was actually on the XP3 yesterday, and that bike felt pretty good, but the reach was on the very long side. So arms very outstretched in front of me, whereas this one, I have a nice comfortable bend at the elbow. So it just feels a little bit more dialed in, and I like that. The riding position here is pretty upright, and you do get quite a bit of adjustability on the bike for its fit, but I think no matter where you have things set, it is going to be pretty upright. There's a single frame size that comes in either a step through or high step model. We're on the step through right now, and the recommended height range goes from 4'10" to 6'3". So I'm 5'11", which kind of puts me on the top end of the recommended height range, but everything feels really good here. You get about 10 inches of adjustment in saddle height with a really long seat post, so I've got great leg extension, and then there's about 4 inches of adjustment in your handlebar height with the telescoping stem here, And there's also a little bit of adjustment in reach there, just with the angle of the stem. So as the handlebars get lower, the reach is a little bit longer there. But yeah, again, comfortable bend at the elbows here, just feels really good. So we've got a suspension fork on this version of the bike, the 750 watt version that Griffin is reviewing. If I remember right, that one comes with a suspension C-post, but you still can pick that up separately if you want one for this model. But you know, overall, I think that the fork itself is doing just fine. We're gonna pop off-road for a quick second here. Kind of want to show off these tires. These are a custom set of 20x3 mid-fat tires that have sort of a hybrid tread pattern, so they're made to roll smoothly on paved surfaces, but then, you know, they give you some knobby shoulders on the tread to give you some traction, better traction in off-road circumstances. So, you know, nothing too crazy there, but if you want to do some light off-roading on dirt or gravel, you know, that should be just fine. But we've also got a 500 watt rear hub motor with the torque sensor that we've talked about, as well as the custom programming from Lectric there. So, you know, nice range of power levels and, you know, varying levels of responsiveness. I've actually got the increased torque multiplier setting on right now. So the bike's feeling a little bit peppier in this mode, which, you know, that's just one of the customization options that you can get. But yeah, I mean, everything, again, feels really good here overall. Let's go ahead and bounce back to the studio. We'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll talk about the display menu and then all the customization options there. So when it comes to both the basics and the extras, I think the XP4 does an awesome job. The bike's overall comfort and fit felt like big improvements, and I think this version of the bike looks and rides a lot better than the XP3, so I think Lectric's redesign has been very successful. One thing that's a big concern with folding e-bikes is frame flex, especially since there's a big hinge in the middle of most folding bikes' frames, but I'm super happy to say that the XP4 felt rock solid and sturdy. Its handling was a little on the twitchier side because of its 20-inch wheels and relatively narrow 660mm handlebars, but A, those things aren't uncommon on folding e-bikes, and B, it felt stable and stuck to the ground, which is a trade-off for its heavier than average weight. FYI, I'd probably advise removing the battery if you're planning to load the bike into a larger vehicle so you can reduce its weight, which can only be done when the hinged frame is opened up, and you may also want an extra set of hands. Touching on the custom tires though, I think they're fairly well balanced with their combination of smooth tread and knobby shoulders. For the most part, they did well on dirt, but they felt a bit slippery on pea gravel, so they may not be the best for super loose terrain, but they should be fine for most places. Another thing to mention is that I found my left heel getting caught on the kickstand at times, so I had to be fairly mindful of my foot placement. I wear a US men's size 12 shoe, but you might not need to worry about it if you have smaller feet or if you tend to center your foot on the pedals. I just personally tend to keep the pedal a bit more forward. Now, I want to circle back to this bike being around $1,000, as I think that's very important to keep in mind. I found myself really impressed with the bike's overall ride quality, and that extended down even to a lot of the little trim elements like the lock-on rubber grips, the rubberized buttons on the control panel, the grippy aluminum pedals, the included turn signals, and the color display. There's a lot of bike for the buck here, especially when compared to similar models in this price range. One big element of that is the new display and the custom user interface, which I'm a big fan of. Let's take a closer look at the display, and then I'll also walk you through all the customization options in the bike settings menu. Okay, so taking a look at the display here, holding the power button in the middle of the button panel will turn the bike on, of course. And then we have the main screen here, which shows your battery charge level, your speedometer, the current pedal assist level, which is color coded. And then there are 3 actual pages of ride data, including this one that you can scroll through with the power button. So the next one still shows the speedometer at the top, as well as your pedal assist level there and the battery readout. But then you have a cadence meter, a trip computer with your time and distance, and the odometer reading. And then the third page here, again, still has the standard ride data at the top, but it shows the amount of power that you are putting in on the pedals measured in watts, as well as the output from the motor in watts. And then there's an amp reading and voltage reading from the battery. And then if we hold the plus and minus buttons, so this takes us into the settings menu, which is a really nice user interface. Previous Lectric bikes, at least up to this point, have only had sort of like a hieroglyphic menu with numbers, codes, that sort of thing. So this is really nice to see. We have a few basic things up front: the screen brightness level, the sleep mode, which is the basically auto off, the number of minutes that the bike will remain on if you don't turn it off, distance in miles or kilometers, tire size, which I wouldn't recommend changing. It will come set up correctly. And then here's where things start to get a little bit more interesting. So bike classification, this allows you to quickly switch between class 1, 2, and 3 modes, or the California class 3 mode that I mentioned, where the throttle is deactivated, but pedal assist will go up to 28 miles per hour. And again, the bike will ship as a class 2. There's assistance level, which is the torque multiplier setting that I mentioned. And as I said, I personally preferred the increased torque multiplier. There's throttle and PAS toggle, which basically determines whether the throttle is active, the pedal assist system is active, or both are active at the same time, which again is how the bike will ship. Throttle output determines whether the throttle speed will be limited differently depending on which pedal assist setting that you're in. And the other option is to have the throttle give you 20 miles per hour in all assist levels. Then we have throttle zero start, which these used to be called throttle after pedal, and a different one that I can't think of at the moment, but basically it's whether the throttle works from a dead stop or if the bike has to be moving before it will engage. And then we have walk mode, speed, so 3 miles per hour, 3.7 miles per hour, or off. And then we have the light operation mode here, which basically just determines how the light system works. So the standard is that the lights are off until you turn them on manually by holding the plus button. And the other option is that the lights will flash until you hold the plus button, in which case the flashing stops and then the lights are on permanently. And then the last thing here is the odometer reset, which we don't really need to do here, but that's the basics. And let's go ahead and bounce back to the main screen there, and we'll finish up the review. As Lectric has gotten bigger and better at making e-bikes, it's been really cool to see how each new generation of their bikes has taken some big steps forward. The first time I hopped on one of the older XPs, it felt like a bike that cost $1,000, but the XP4 felt like one that could have had a much higher price tag, and I think if it were just about any other brand, that probably would have been the case. Lectric aims to make e-bikes that are affordable and both value and feature packed, as well as easy and fun to ride, and I think the XP4 checks all of those boxes. I'm gonna say it one more time for the people in the back. This bike costs $1,000, and at least based on our testing so far, I'm comfortable saying you'd be hard pressed to find a better bike for the price. Now, that's not to say this bike is perfect, and there were a handful of things that have come up so far that show it still has some room for improvement, but I think most folks will agree that they're acceptable trade-offs for the price. Most importantly, we'd like to see an extra rubber bumper added to the frame to prevent unwanted contact, but buyers should also understand that this bike is on the heavier side. Otherwise, the XP4 has performed well up to this point, and we expect it to continue to do well. Of course, you can get even more bike with the 750 watt version if you don't mind spending a few hundred more, but I don't think the upgrade will be necessary for most folks, especially anyone who's looking for a quality bike at a super budget-friendly price. So whether you're buying your first e-bike or outfitting your whole family, this is one we'd highly recommend checking out. As with previous versions of the bike, it would make a great travel companion for RV enthusiasts, but it's equally suitable for the daily commute to work or just cruising around the neighborhood with a buddy or your kid. If you want to take a closer look at the XP4, we'll leave 2 links in the video description. You can read our written review at electricbikereport.com, or you can head to Lectric's website to place an order. If you decide to make a purchase, again, please help to support us by using that link. And if you enjoyed this review, please like, subscribe, and let us know what you think of it down in the comments section. Let us know what you do with this bike and where you'd take it. We'd love to hear from you, but thanks for taking a ride with me today. Again, I'm John with Lectric Bike Report, and this is the Lectric XP4.